Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
So again, good morning. It does feel like we've been here for more than what my rational mind says is the amount of time, which is a good sign. Yeah. Time stretches and time condenses. Interesting. So we'll have another Dharma dialogue. I'll speak maybe 30, 35 minutes, and we'll talk together. I want to start by remembering, I gave a talk several years ago in which I said that I would talk on the most important spiritual topic of all. And I asked people, what will I talk about? And their answers were very good. You might be thinking right now. Love, compassion, wisdom, awareness, pure awareness, the bodhisattva, equanimity. All those were wrong. What I wanted to talk about was the most important spiritual topic of all, which is making this real in daily life. And later, Spirit Rock published his newsletter. A transcript of my talk was featured on the front page as the featured article of the newsletter, and it said, "The most important spiritual topic of all, comma, Donald Rothberg." And, yeah, my mother liked it. So in a way, that's what I want to explore. I've structured the 3 Dharma dialogues around the theme that we had taken in a little bit in a loose way for the theme of the retreat, developing clear seeing and opening the heart. And we focused on the different ways of developing wisdom in the first Dharma dialogue, more on opening the heart and then connecting the open heart with wisdom in the second. And in this third, I want to ask, how do we bring it home, so to speak? How do we bring our retreat home? How do we develop these qualities in the context of daily life? In our everyday lives. And I gave also some structure in terms of talking about the first more like wisdom, clear seeing, we could say in some ways the mind, the second, the heart, the open heart, and the third in some way has to do with embodiment. How do we embody all of this in our being with others, in our action in the world? That's what I want to explore. So it does have that interesting parallel of mind, body, or mind, emotion, and heart, and body. We can start by acknowledging that daily life practice is not easy in this culture. That we have all sorts of, distractions, addictions, things that take us away maybe from our practice. It's a very mental culture. Many of us have periods of time where we're, as it were, wrapped up in our minds. And kind of what I call the automatic mind for significant periods of a day, right? Anyone relate to that? The automatic mind, right? And I remember the Thai teacher, Ajahn Buddhadasa, was once asked, "What do you think of Western civilization?" Which, when I hear that, I always think of the same question was asked of Gandhi once. What do you think of Western civilization? And Gandhi's answer was, it would be a good idea. And Ajahn Buddhadasa, a Thai teacher who died in 1993, I should say, his answer was, lost in thought. Yeah. And so there are challenges in that way. And we may not always feel so much support for our practice. I think this community is a strong one, and having this as a resource is a gift that probably most people who are interested in practice don't have something as strong as the Sangha. Right? So really something to really be with and take advantage of. And we also don't always emphasize very much the kind of practices that are really important for daily life practice. There's so much an emphasis on meditation, and we don't emphasize so much, for example, the ethical teachings, which are guides in many ways for our relationships, for daily life. We don't emphasize so much wise speech, which when we develop that to a significant degree can be such a powerful practice in daily life. Yeah. And it's been very important for me to work with wise speech over the years and actually teach it quite a bit, as many of you know. And related to that sort of threefold distinction of wisdom in the mind and the kind heart and the body, I find that grounding in the body is one of the secrets for daily life practice. That having a strong grounding in the body and increasingly being able to ground in the body even when we're talking with others, when we're interacting, listening to a talk, eating, and so forth, is a really key way to embody our practice in daily life. And I remember a discussion I had with John Travis. How many know John? Yeah. John was a mentor to me, really, really important. I've had a few very important mentors. And John, maybe the most important, and he guided me, especially in about a 4 or 5 year period when I was coming into the teaching role more, or at least Dharma teaching. And I remember one day I was talking, and I was, I think, talking about daily life practice and how it was hard, and complaining and saying, those people in a monastery, they get so much support, right? And they have a lot of chances to meditate and it's hard out here, And John's answer was, let your body be your monastery. Really, when he said that, I was kind of electrified. Right, whoa. And he also we worked very fully on grounding in the body for almost all of those 4 or 5 years. Giving me practices that I did probably 2 years. Instead of being with the breath, my main focus was the whole body in meditation, right? Including all the time on retreats. Just the whole body as just treating it like the breath. When the mind wanders, come back to the whole body. And it was powerful. I remember having some really interesting experiences walking in the forest at Spirit Rock, that when I was just totally with my whole body and not thinking, animals related to me differently. It was very interesting. I had deer come up to me, right, in that place. It was really something. And then another period of time really grounding in the belly or the hara, right? Because, for myself, I think being kind of somewhat introverted and having, like I mentioned, I knew from the Driver Ed movies, good heart, right? But I could have an open heart, but I'd be knocked around sometimes by situations or interactions. And it made a huge difference to really get a really, really firm, could almost be there all the time, like a belly awareness, like in the, which those of you who've done martial arts or even something like Qigong know that this is, it's a place to ground the energy, right? The, whatever we call it in Qigong, it's the lower Tantian, or it's around the kind of the navel, the navel chakra around there as a center in some of the martial arts. So very crucial. So that can be something that we ourselves, if we have a good grounding in the body, somehow bring that out more in daily life. If we don't have such a good grounding in the body, it can be really a place to focus. Could be, do more walking meditation. In the sitting meditation, could do some of those practices like I did, which really, I think in many ways the whole of practice is a further grounding in the body. That's certainly what I felt right at the beginning. Maybe many of us did. I think I mentioned a student, planning, thinking, and, I learned to be with my body. Even, I had been very physically active, but I wasn't aware of my body, right? Anyone have that conditioning? Yeah, I think very common. And so that can be a theme that we focus on. And I should say, I'm going to mention a few things, actually a number of things related to bringing the retreat home in daily life practice. And I think what I want to suggest is listen for the 1 or 2 or 3 that resonate, not to do too much. 1 or 2 things is plenty if they would resonate and you want to work with them. So if we want to bring what we've explored further into daily life, how do we bring the wisdom teachings and practices more into daily life? I've already mentioned yesterday some of the ways we might want to stay with that reflection on impermanence. 5 or 10 minutes a day, maybe at the beginning of a sitting, can really bring about that recollection of impermanence, and could be recollection of one's own mortality can be part of that. Can be a really, really valuable practice. We could choose, and this, we could choose maybe for a given week or a given month. Okay, I want to focus on impermanence for this week or this month. We could do that practice I just mentioned. We could do some of the other simple practices, being, maybe in a place where there's sound, or listening to maybe music that's just one instrument, so it's simple, and staying with the sound, and noticing, arising, staying, passing, over and over again. Again, the learning, in my experience, from focusing on impermanence is more cumulative than sudden aha. It's just, oh yeah, things are impermanent. I can see that on a moment-to-moment basis more. So we could choose to could be a beautiful structure for one's practice to say, okay, this month I'll focus on impermanence. It doesn't mean all the time, but it means maybe I do that for 10 minutes in my sitting. Bring that in. Maybe I read some further, listen to some Dharma talks on impermanence. Same thing with dukkha, same thing with not self. Those could be, we could say, I'd like to go more into that, do it for a week, a month, not some big thing, but just a theme that's part of our practice, right? That we look at that we do some reading on it. That kind of structure works well for many of us, and for some of us doesn't work. If you're the one that doesn't work, forget it. But maybe there's some peace, But a lot of people do work well with that kind of structure, right? And that can be a possibility. So with dukkha and reactivity, it's a wonderful teaching to guide one in daily life. We can set the intention once or twice a day, let me look out for when my mind is going into reactivity. And we could set the intention to pause and notice it, or come back to it if I've just had a time of reactivity in a conversation, or after I read an email or a text, okay, there's reactivity. Let me just tune into it for 5 minutes. Let me be with it. Again, we could work with situations where there's some reactivity interpersonally, or maybe in relation to what's happening in the world, and we can sometimes deliberately bring the reactivity up in a sitting for 5 or 10 minutes and explore it with mindfulness. Again, to notice it. We could, when something difficult or painful has happened, say, I'm going to watch for the shooting of the second arrow. That goes such a long way, right? That just to give that guidance to oneself or to friends, right? In, using suitable language, because it's predictable, right? We have something painful happen to ourselves, we will tend in some way to shoot the second arrow, whether it's saying, oh, this will keep happening, or, oh, this person I can't trust, rah, 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 rah. And remembering, again, that the complexity of reactivity is that it's mixed often with insight or something important and valid, right? And that the teaching, I don't know if it's so explicitly in the teaching, but it's more what I have found necessary, is that we have to disentangle the insight from the reactivity. Especially just through being with it, being mindful, bringing in the heart practices, and so forth. And similarly, we could take, okay, I'm going to focus on not self, and again, there are different ways to do that. Listen to talks. I've suggested the 2 practices of tracking for the thick self, and then consciously opening up in different ways to the experience of sort of less self being there. Whether it's in our mindfulness practice or being in the forest and just letting the sense of self fall away some. Noticing flow experiences where I think there's not much sense of self. Again, could be being creative, art, dancing, music, being with friends. Notice when you're in that flow experience, when we're with people we really trust and are really connected with, there's often not much sense of self. And notice that and kind of tune in. It can be really, really helpful. And then similarly, in developing the heart practices, I find it really valuable to have a commitment to practice at least one heart practice for 10 minutes a day. That keeps it going and makes the heart practice available. Something I don't know if I mentioned much, but the heart practices are valuable in a lot of ways. I mean, most basically for just deepening our access to the kind heart, but they can also be very helpful, like in the middle of the night. If anyone wakes up and, something difficult happened yesterday, or there's something more regular that wakes one up at night with difficult thoughts. I have found for myself and working with others that something like metta or compassion, if we've done it regularly, will have the strength to actually, if we bring it in, it'll actually, because at certain times, it's actually, mindfulness isn't so possible. In the middle of the night, I have disturbing thoughts come to me, and I'm too tired and too vulnerable to do mindfulness practice, but metta is accessible. And we can do metta, and it actually is suppressing the thoughts. Not the usual instruction, but at certain moments when it's too much to be mindful, not possible, suppression of what we might call difficult or unskillful thoughts is actually what's called for. And metta can help us really shift out of the difficult things. But we have to have it be strong enough. Metta or other heart practices are also wonderful to bring into various kinds of daily activities. A lot of people I work with bring in metta in driving. I think we talked about that some yesterday. I don't think I've mentioned it here, but maybe another time being with GBF and I know I mentioned it to one or two of you. I think maybe I did mention it because someone took it up. But I do regular metta practice with lap swimming. Right? I think I did mention that because someone said, who was the person who, yeah. And so I do lap swimming about 5 times a week. And it's about 40 minutes of metta, one being per lap. It works. And now if I didn't, and then sometimes when the lanes are crowded, I have to, I have to navigate a little bit, and the metta gets a little bit, mixed in with avoiding collisions. But about 2/3 of the time, that doesn't happen. And I have my own lane or just 2 people, and I can do metta without really navigating too much other people. And I've done it now, so it would feel completely weird if I didn't do metta when I swim. And that's the benefit of routine, right? Routines, if we do them, any aspect of our practice, it feels weird when we don't do practice. So like if you take a walk every day after a meal and do metta for when you're walking, and so that's another way, do metta for the plants, the animals, the people you see when you take a walk, right? I once was teaching an online retreat on the Brahma Vihara, and I would take a lot of walks. I think it was also during the pandemic when my swimming pool was not open. So I took more walks. And I remember teaching on the Brahma Vihara, and just kind of spontaneously, we were talking yesterday about kind of the creativity of just developing almost like new practices. And I walked around the neighborhood, and I would do sympathetic joy, mudita, especially to the plants and flowers and trees, right? Because there weren't so many people walking around, but there were a lot of plants and flowers and trees, and it just seemed to come, may you continue to blossom, right? And it was really heart-opening, and I could extend it, of course, to the people, And I just was so full of the mudita that I also found myself extending it to automobiles. May you continue to run. I had never done that before. Right? It was interesting, right? And so that's sort of. So I think we were getting again into it, I guess, last night. But trusting one's own creativity. All these practices that we're doing were made up by someone, right? And those of us who've done longer retreats know that there is a natural creativity, and we can make up stuff and see if they work. So that was one I share with you. Could be metta or mudita for plants and flowers. Can do it around here for the trees and so forth. Another way to bring metta into daily life is to bring it into interactions. Maybe like go to a meeting. If you have a meeting, go there with the intention of metta. And we should say that metta can coexist with saying something that someone else doesn't want to hear. Okay? I've been calling that, like the phrase tough love, tough metta. Right? And so but really, it's maybe more difficult practice, but how do we have a kind heart, even when we're setting boundaries, saying no, saying that wasn't okay, saying we have to talk about this, right? And we develop that by developing the metta otherwise. But maybe even when that's not occurring, we can go into a conversation, a family gathering, with the intention of a kind heart. I've been lately, maybe the last 6 or 7 months, going into interactions, and I have like 3 words that I use as my intention. It's really been helpful. Intentions are very helpful often. They're no guarantee of them holding up, but they help. Okay, but my intentions have been 3 words: kindness, empathy, and presence. Right, and they're good guides, But you can have a version of something like that helps you. And so, just a few other ways to deepen daily life practice. I think I probably have talked about this with GBF before, but I find a Sabbath is really helpful, like something like once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks, where we have a little more practice, and even could be a whole day. For up to the pandemic, I did a Sabbath most days for about 35 years. And I would do it especially when I would teach on Wednesdays at Spirit Rock. And I would teach in the morning, have a certain amount of practice, and then I'd stay at Spirit Rock and sit in the staff area and join in on a retreat and get another 6 or 7 hours of formal practice in. And I would do that, 2 Wednesdays a month, and then when I wasn't doing that, I'd do it at home, something like that. It doesn't have to be a whole day. It could be a morning, 3 hours, something like that. And if we do that regularly, it becomes a little bit like having retreat time once a week or once every 2 weeks, and can really make a difference. Another important reflection that I know is from talking with people one-on-one yesterday, and also from being, just here with the whole group, is important, that can come out of a retreat, is prioritizing what's important in my life. Retreats can often lead to that question. What do I want to let go of? Anyone having those kind of reflections about priorities, what to let go of? Yeah. And I even encourage before we leave here, or maybe it could be, maybe even between when we finish here at noon and when we have lunch, take some time, and maybe you've been doing this, write in a journal and see what comes to you from the quiet, the relative quiet here before we get too busy talking. Take some time like that, ask, what are my next 1 or 2 steps? Do I want to shift my practice in any way? And I know for many of us it means taking, letting the retreat be a support for reinvigorating one's practice, right? I've talked with a number of people about that, so that can be really crucial. And one piece of guidance that I found myself giving to people in the one-on-ones, which I think can be really important, if you have one or two shifts you want to make to your practice, make a really strong commitment to follow through with them for the next week. I find that more skillful than making a commitment, I will just do this for the rest of my life or indefinitely. That if you actually make a concrete commitment for 1 week and stay with it, come the proverbial hell or high water, right? That builds the routine, and then it's way more likely that it will continue on. But if you make a commitment, okay, I want to continue with this, I'm going to shift in this direction, but you don't make a concrete commitment for the next few days, it can easily get lost or watered down. And we probably know that from past experience, right? Yeah. So that's a recommendation. This is from the Sufi poet Hafez. This is really about priorities and looking at what's there in one's life. Run, my dear, from anything that may not strengthen your precious budding wings. Run, my dear, from anything that may not strengthen your precious budding wings. And then, really, the last thing to say is that we want somehow to bring our practice into the world. The world needs so deeply people who can come with wisdom and compassion and a kind heart. And so if we have extra time, we may want to find, many of us are, I'm sure, are doing this, find an issue which calls us, right? See what that is. And I've worked with a number of people who say, I want to be more involved with the social issue. And we have a discussion, and I asked, do you know what issue it is? Because it's helpful really to focus on one issue, right? Or maybe two, not to try to do everything. And then, how many hours a week do you have for that issue? That's one way of getting at it. That won't work for everyone. And then, with a few people, I remember one person, okay, I want to work on climate issues. How many hours do you have a week? Someone who's working. Okay, I've got 3 to 5 hours a week that I want to devote. Okay, for next time, research and come back with 3 or 4 organizations you could work with. Or it could be, might not always be an organization. And she did that, and she got really clear, and she decided to do work with the organization called Eco-Dharma. Many of you may know that, which offers trainings and classes related to climate and other ecological issues. And she's been working with them for 3 to 5 hours a week, supporting the work. I think she does a lot of the work just actually doing some computer work for helping the organization, right? Something like that. And so I think that, that's something to also to reconsider. Do I have some time? Do I want to bring my practice and connect it with really helping us move to a better world? It's the time, folks, right? It's now, right? For all the different issues, ranging from the climate to racism to all the stuff marginalizing LGBTQ, trans, and so forth, all that. Economic inequality. We could probably go on for a while, right, with naming those. So that can be really crucial. So let me finish maybe with 2 stories. to finish that, bring out the last point. Let me see where this is. Oh, there's one thing I was going to give you that I didn't say. This is from Jack Kerouac about kindness. Okay? Practice kindness all day to everybody, and you will realize you're already in heaven now. Practice kindness all day to everybody, and you will realize you're already in heaven now. Okay. And then two stories to close. One was, I actually heard it from my mom a while ago. It was after Shirley Chisholm died. People know Shirley Chisholm, who I think was the first black person who ran for president, 1972. I met her some because I think I mentioned I worked once in the U.S. Congress. And when I was a college student, I worked for a summer as an intern in the Congress. And I met her. And this was a story from the 1972 election campaign. She was running, and one of the other candidates was George Wallace. Okay. And during the campaign, George Wallace was shot. There was an assassination attempt. Shirley Chisholm went to visit him in the hospital. When he first saw her, he said, because he recovered. Wallace recovered, so he was in decent shape. He said when he first saw her, he said, "Your people wouldn't like the fact that you're visiting me." She said, "I wouldn't want this to happen to anyone." Not long after that, she sponsored a bill to raise the minimum wage, and Wallace helped her. And the bill was passed. Wallace helped her with the Southern representatives. And you may know that later, Wallace repudiated his racist past. Before he died, he repudiated his racism. How much that came from that one moment of kindness? Don't know. And then the last thing is from a story from Howard Thurman, who was also African American, a theologian who set up in the Bay Area the first sort of more explicitly interracial church, I think in the 1940s and 50s. He died, I think, around 1980. And there was a story of him meeting a young person, like maybe around early 70s. And the person asked him, what should I do with my life? And Thurman had been kind of he was a mystic, but also an activist. And, he might have said, well, and we have a lot of work necessary with our church, you maybe join us. He didn't, his answer was this, I'll leave you with this. Don't ask what the world needs. How's that for for an activist speaking, and after what I just said? Don't ask what the world needs. Rather, ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is people who have come alive.
Who's the author again?
Yeah.
Who's the author again?
Howard Thurman. Yeah. Thurman. So let's just sit again quietly for a few moments, and we can talk together. And maybe seeing what resonated with you, anything you'd like to take further into daily life, you can reflect on that. Or even could bring to mind, do I want to make one or two adjustments to my practice, to my daily life way of being? So thank you again for your kind attention, and we can open things up to sharing or questions, spontaneous poems. Yeah, Clark, yeah.
Try to speak louder so you don't need to repeat what I said like last time. Well, two things. It was just very interesting to me. There was a point where you teared up a little bit, I think around the Chisholm point, and I started crying.
Which?
We were talking about Shirley Chisholm meeting with George Wallace. And I started crying, and I noticed, I don't think it's a second arrow, but I noticed like a certain something, like a certain discomfort with that. And then I just tried to open my awareness more broadly and hold it without trying to change it in any way. So that was one thing. But the daily life practice that came to me was bringing the Brahma Viharas to all of my messages and texts in a way that would be received properly, not from my intent point of view. And I talked with somebody on the retreat who I send a lot of text to that I dictate, because I'd recently hurt my hand, and so I was trying not to type so much. And my intention was, in sending more texts, was make the person feel more that I'm thinking about them. And I asked something about this, and the person mentioned how they often have like mistakes in them. And I said, well, does it make you feel less cared for? And he said, well, I wouldn't have said it, but now that you ask, yes. And I thought that was really interesting. And so I'm making this commitment right now that I'm going to, in that very specific way, make my texts more caring and emails, that I'll spell check them and reread them, lest people feel that way. I know, it sounds kind of funny, I don't feel that way myself, but I know that this person is not alone in feeling that, so I thought I'd share that.
Yeah, thanks, Clark. Yeah, it can be a beautiful practice to have aspects of ordinary communication, emails or text, telephone calls, bring in that spirit of metta or some of the other heart practices. I know that, again, I started doing that, something like that spontaneously. I had, quite a while ago, maybe 17, 18 years ago, I had a 5-week metta retreat where I did metta myself for 5 weeks. And I had to get on email the last 3 days. And of course, there were hundreds of emails. And I found myself, with every email that I answered during that time, I would bring in, I needed to bring in almost like a phrase at the beginning, may this find you well, and so forth, and actually feel the metta, and do that first, and then work out the text. And that's mostly been a practice since then. Of course, it can become mechanical, so it's really, but it means pausing a little bit in that. And of course, with people I communicate a lot, I have to vary the language a little bit so it doesn't feel rote. Oh, it's doing Mavis find you well again, for the 100th time. And it could lead to reactivity. Right, but I think finding ways, just in ordinary ways to do that is beautiful. Yeah. Lee, and then,
So I think that, let me get this off. I think that issue relates to right speech generally, and I don't do a lot of text, so I don't have that much problem with it, but I do a lot of emails.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's aging or what, but I frequently make errors. But it's also not just the errors. That one of the advantages that I have found in doing emails as opposed to conversation is I can edit it. And I don't mean just for typos and errors, but also thinking about how do I say this in a way that will be received well. And don't know if it's useful, but seems like something I should do.
Yeah, beautiful. And to, even to bring in the intention with one's emails to connect it maybe with metta, track for reactivity. But I think, again, in daily life, intentionality and having the intention, after a while it's just there, but can be, can really make it a very key way to connect our practice. And you mentioned the wise speech and just the care, like with what you do. It's expressing your intention for skillful speech, right? Yeah.
And just to add briefly two practicalities to that. So it's often difficult because that's why there's editors, because people, even editors can't be their own editor generally, because you know what you meant to say and it all seems like that. So reading it aloud is something I read someplace, and that's helpful. And another one, which is perhaps not quite as helpful, but my printer is right there, so printing it out and reading it over and then correcting.
Interesting.
Those help.
Yeah, and two other things I found helpful in terms of emails, maybe other electronic communications. One is for anything really that feels really kind of
Questionable.
Intense or very, kind of something challenging or charged or whatever. My colleague Sylvia Borstein has a practice which is called Think It Over, which concretely manifests as some communications wait one day. Right? And similarly, the other thing, I have a basic guideline is I don't try to work out anything really charged generally over electronic communication. I think there could be some exceptions to that where there are relationships where it could hold it, but in general, I don't do that. Yeah. Please, and then in the back, yeah.
I'm Henry, and I wanted to respond to something that you said yesterday.
Okay.
You mentioned that we might have some strange dreams.
Oh.
And so last night I dreamed that I showed up unannounced at the home of a lesbian couple that I'm friends with. And, it was kind of apparent that they had some other friends coming, and they even mentioned that there were restrictions by their landlord on the number of guests they could have. So I took the hint and decided to go elsewhere. But it was just a feeling of that impulse to connect, but also, I guess worrying about not being welcome.
Yeah. Well, what do you make of it?
Well, that is what I make of it. The impulse to connect, and the fear of not being welcome, and I guess it is part of a larger desire to connect more.
Yeah, maybe because I'm thinking one could take that dream, and what I'm hearing is the most important thing is the impulse to connect, right? And even though in the dream it may not work, not to interpret, I better be careful about this impulse to connect, right? Right, but maybe not going there. I'm not hearing that. Yeah. Okay. Other dreams are welcome. But
yeah, this is not a dream, but it is a reflection about electronics.
Oh yeah.
I've been retired 10 years, but part of my job at UCSF was to communicate with my boss. And even though my desk was outside her closed office, he'd always send me emails and expecting me to respond as opposed to getting up. And we kept on having disagreements just by emails. So I just decided to get up whenever he said and just talk. So in some ways, it's still important to call someone, to hear them breathing, have them pause. So for me, to feel their emotional heart or their being on the other line, and have them listen. And also a good practice to be just listening to what's come up for them. Because sometimes when we just get, three-dot journalism into personal communications, it loses so much of the...
You can lose, yeah. So, such a crucial point that that's really where the heart practices come in, I didn't say much about empathy here, but I think it's so central in daily life. Empathy more as the intention to connect, really, like with Henry, the intention to connect and understand another, and that can get lost when we get into the details, like what's the experience for this other person, what are the emotions, what's going on, and so. Yeah, really valuable to sometimes just move from the electronic to the telephone or the walking around the corner. Yeah. Thank you. Please, Steve.
Hi. So, in speaking about or thinking about ways in which bringing Dharma into daily life, I've been to many retreats and talks, and what is usually neglected is the animals. And
what's usually?
The animals.
Yeah. And
I get choked up because it's so near and dear to me, but there's so much suffering that the animals, in this world encounter. And, my guideposts for my life are the precepts, and certainly the first two. And, I'm involved in an organization called Dharma Voices for the Animals, and I feel it my responsibility to bring this up because this is an area in our lives that we can really make a difference in suffering. And I was just wondering from your perspective how you think about this, for the average person eating meat, eggs, wearing leather, this type of thing.
Yeah.
And then being in concert. And also, I just want to say, I've done a lot of reading about this, and it seems like the Buddha is very clear about this subject.
The Buddha?
Yeah. So I was wondering, if you could just speak
Yeah,
to this.
yeah. Actually, the Buddha was clear about care and metta for all beings. I don't think he said you should have a vegetarian diet. I don't think that's in the text anywhere. And it's actually a little bit controversial, some of you may know, in Southeast Asia. Right? The monastics in Thailand or Burma, they eat what they are given, which is often meat, And when I've stayed at monasteries, I've been a vegetarian since I was 19, personally. And it was uncomfortable for me, at those monasteries. And there's some new organizations in Thailand. One is called, some of you may know, Santi Ashok. and they actually are vegetarians. And I don't want to go too much into this story, but we had a meeting. I've been involved in an organization called the International Network of Engaged Buddhists, with meetings often in Thailand. And at one meeting, the Santi Ashok people who were in Thailand, they did the cooking. It was all vegetarian. And we heard some complaining afterwards, even though I thought it was great. And it's interesting. I've actually heard one friend who's a Buddhist teacher who likes to say things rather out there. He said he thinks the Buddha made a mistake in not being straightforwardly vegetarian and saying not to kill, other animals. Right? So I think but most retreat centers are vegetarian, so I think that's there, not necessarily vegan. And one of my little pet things also, you probably can relate to this, is I notice very much that, I don't know how much it's in the organization, but I know very well that human beings are animals. Right? And we often, in ordinary English, we use language that we talk about, animals meaning other than human, which I always like to correct that, because I thought of, there's a poem by Michael McClure, some of you know, from one of the Beat poets, and the poem, I think, is called Mammal Patriot. Right, and so it might be interesting for to look at that, but that's been a little pet thing for me. My language, I speak about non-human animals, right, or something like that. But that's when I talked about dedicating one's energy to a particular issue. That's what you've been doing that, Steve, right? Yeah. Yeah. Please, Jeff.
On the topic of applying how do we take this from retreat up and that into our lives, for me, I find that the path of karma yoga, or devotional yoga, is to devote everything we do to, whether it's our guru or peace or working on ourselves, or our master used to say, is the best thing we can do for anybody else.
Yeah.
To start there. So everything we do can become, sort of, to borrow the title, a gristmill mill, or working on ourselves, or offering it up in a way to a higher cause.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. So it's something that we get more maybe from Hindu tradition, but really so valuable, the sense of one's work as service. Yes. And an integral part of spiritual practice. How many people have worked with something like that understanding?
Like what?
Something like that understanding of karma yoga, or work as service or spiritual practice. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, and those who raise their hands, what helps you to remember that? What helps you, just on day-to-day life, what helps that to be real or richer, or help you just to keep your focus on that? Any thoughts? Yeah.
At work, I used to have my computer program every hour to ding, so I would go into that conscious.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be on your computer.
Yeah, that would give me a little. I remember because there was so much going on, but if I got that ding, it was like time to take a breath.
A little reminder, and
practice gratitude.
Yeah. So ways of being reminded on the computer. Yeah, please. Sure.
Well, two things. One is to get less attached to the outcome, the offering. Yeah. And the other thing is to pay attention to my ego inflation. Like, I'm doing this because I feel like such a good person. I can really feel like I know what that feels like, and I'm wary and try and at least pay attention. And
really tracking for that manifestation of the thick self. And then the first was watching for attachment to the outcome.
The outcome.
Yeah.
This is an offering. The service is an offering. I might not get back what I expected.
Yeah. You do your best and do one's best and let the results be what they are. That's actually the last chapter of my book is called Committed Action, Non-Attachment to Outcome. Others sharing what's helpful for that sense of work or service as practice. What helps you remember? Yeah, Steve?
Yeah, so I work with a lot of people in distress, and I often just look at them and I just say, you want to be happy like I want to be happy. And it just helps me connect.
Yeah, just really tuning into their aspirations, for being happy, being at peace. Lee, yeah.
So this connects with appreciative inquiry, though it's not where it came from for me. So as a professor for many years, one of the things to do is get student papers and then you write comments. And at some point I learned, I don't think I knew this at the very beginning, that it's not just about looking for what's wrong. It's also looking for what's right.
Yeah.
To encourage them. And perhaps getting suggestions that might be helpful. And I think this relates to the workplace many times.
Yeah.
So if the boss never speaks to you except to tell you what you're doing wrong, that doesn't work really well for the organization or the boss or the recipient. So you need to find positive things also.
That's beautiful. And how many have used some version of that, of really, could be working with someone, guiding someone, and as a teacher, as a mentor. It could be just responding to someone's contributions, what someone said, and starting really connecting with what was really positive or good or valuable, or really being empathic in that way.
And even doing Amazon reviews.
Yeah. Yeah. Please. Yeah.
Yeah. Something Steve said reminded me of something I'm trying to understand intellectually, and it's hard to do in practice. But it's this idea of I heard in what you said the universality of suffering, that we all suffer in time, and then not to blame ourselves individually by adding to that. And then that brings me back into loving kindness towards myself.
Yeah.
Modeling that relationship.
Yeah. I didn't bring in this weekend so much about being hard on myself, which I think is a major area. I'm trying to finish my book on transforming the judgmental mind. And I think in the preface it's going to be, if I hadn't done more inner work on transforming the judgmental mind, the book wouldn't have been out much sooner. But yeah, it's such a big one. I remember, the Dalai Lama, I was actually with the Dalai Lama a long time ago, one of his first trips to the U.S., and he was doing questions and answers, and someone asked him, I don't believe I deserve love. Please comment. And the Dalai Lama was confused by the question. And he went back and forth with the translator in Tibetan. His English is good. It took about 3 or 4 minutes. He wasn't sure how to answer. And then he blurted out in English, "You're wrong." Not usually how he speaks, right? And then later he said that he didn't understand self-hatred in Western culture. Right? He didn't get it. And he actually talked with psychologists and teachers for the next 4 years trying to get a better hold about it, really better understanding of it. It's not there in the same way in other cultures. They have their issues, but right. And so it's very, very strong. Yeah, please.
Oh, no, I want to stick with that for a minute. But this is another thing about service. Oftentimes, when I'm with someone who's in pain or distressed, or when I'm talking about this situation with others, that the thing that kind of gets discounted easily is just being present to someone.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, and sometimes myself included, feel like you're not doing anything. But actually just being present, being connected, and setting aside conditions, judgments, and advice, I think is a really wonderful way of being of service.
Yeah, just being present, for someone under, rated. Yeah. I remember there's something that Carl Rogers once said, pretty much the same thing. Like, he said, when someone just hears you without trying to mold you, without trying to judge you, it feels damn good. Yeah. Please, Brian.
Yeah, just a very sort of practical question in day-to-day practice. You mentioned the power of feeling more embodied, and you suggested meditating on your body at times. Other thoughts around just what to build into our daily practice, like a walking meditation or other ways to feel more embodied, yoga, of course.
Yeah, what daily practices can help with deepening embodiment? Could be a long list. And so, but I think if I had to be most general, I would say have at least one practice a day where there is awareness of the body. It could be doing yoga, it could be doing qigong, it could be taking a walk, it could be a portion of formal meditation, it could be maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe doing one of the practices that I named, being with the whole body. It could be devoting one meal a day to silent awareness of eating, something like that. Yeah. A practice I haven't mentioned, which can really help, because I think I mentioned in passing that embodiment can be really helpful in speaking and listening, in wise speech. And one practice is to stay grounded in your body, especially when you're more in a listening role, like at a meeting, and just keep some minimal awareness of your body. It could be the hands touching together, or a connection with the chair or cushion or something like that. And maybe have at least 20-30% awareness there, even if you're at a meeting and taking notes and so forth. And that will build the capacity, for grounding in the body. So we could go further, but those are some starters. Yeah, it's a really important topic. Like I say, I think embodiment is a key, if not the key, for daily life. For most of us, some of us are, very, more embodied than others. But I know that's been really central for me. Yeah. Let me take one or two more. How are we doing? Yeah, Matthew.
I just wanted to add that for me, one of the most frequent opportunities for daily practice is when I'm in a situation when I'm waiting. Rather than waiting for the bus or waiting to have your prescription filled at Walgreens, and if I don't have anything like a book or music to distract me or to fill in that time, it's a great opportunity to just start getting in touch with my breath, scan my body.
Beautiful. Yeah, all these opportunities, being at a light, right? Opportunity for, part of me saying is impatient, but then, okay, time for practice. Yeah.
people of mine used to say, we stopped the war in the checkout line.
Say again?
We stopped the war in the checkout line.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Please, yeah, and then, yeah.
As we're talking and as you're talking, I'm kind of overwhelmed because it's like every moment of every day is an opportunity to be conscious and to have intention and to wake up.
Yeah.
I just feel so kind of thrown back on my effort and my experience and how many moments, like we're talking about, that I missed.
Yeah.
And then I have to kind of remind myself I'm doing the best I can.
That's right.
And then sometimes I just say, how did I end up here with all this, so far from being awake? I can unwind that in a way and tell it my story.
Every day, every moment, opportunity. Yeah. And that's where I think it can be helpful to, have one or two or three places where we give more focused attention, like is being mentioned, maybe the waiting or the taking the walk or whatever, so that we have these places that we get into a routine with being awareness, and those sort of help be a foundation for the places where we don't have routines. That can be useful. Please, yeah. And then.
Yeah, I was meeting an old friend who was a brilliant woman, had been a career public defender, and she was on her phone. I said, she's probably reading something important. She was watching puppy YouTubes. And it struck me, I was in Paris last year, and every young person was on their phone as they were walking. They were completely missing what was going on, and it's somewhat true here.
Wow.
And I think we are getting, I include myself, blindsided by techno-urgency. I mean, I can feel myself, urgency, getting home and checking on the news for the past 48 hours, How bad has it gotten? That's something I'm going to revise, because I have been checking the news before I meditate, and I'm just going to stop
Yeah.
Don't. What did the Dalai Lama say?
You're wrong.
You're wrong.
Yeah. Did you want to add something further?
We were talking about all the missed opportunities. Not to be flippant, and it may be obvious, but when I have that thought, I try to say, this is an opportunity to be compassionate for myself.
Yeah. Beautiful. This is an opportunity, just right now. Yeah. And then part of practice is noticing the self judgments or self-criticism. I'm not doing enough, and watch that. That's practicing. Yeah, Clark. Yeah.
Apropos of that idea of missing out on opportunities, I really relate to that. And I find two things helpful. One is this mantra of there are many ways of doing well. There are many ways of doing well. So it's like it doesn't have to be any particular moment or any particular practice or obsessing about what's the perfect practice, what's the perfect time to practice. And the other is I changed my to-do list to my daily menu. Mm-hmm. So I related to if I go into a restaurant, I'm not going to eat everything that's there, and a lot of it looks interesting most of the time. But I just have to pick a few things from that daily menu. So those two keep that feeling of I'm missing out or I'm not doing enough a little bit at bay.
Yeah, that's great, and this is where the Sabbath can really be important. Traditionally, even I think many of you know, Orthodox Jews would not use electronics, would not even use cars and so forth, and having a period of time when one, like a retreat, where one, at least in theory, doesn't go onto electronics, right? And can have a period of away from the to-do list, right? The value of non-doing. Right? So, and can balance with the doing. So I think that's. I think your reflections sound really helpful. Of the watching out for the tyranny of the to-do list, right? And I've often thought that there are many people for whom it's more important to complete their to-do list than to reach full awakening, or even awaken. Right? Anyone relate to that? Yeah. Please, yeah.
Just two fine lines. Warren James once said, if something is worth doing, it's even worth doing poorly, which is quite liberating, I think.
Yeah.
You don't have to be great at things. Sometimes when I go to play the piano, and just some days it's just not there, and I still do it, because who knows what I'll discover. But also Einstein said that the only real question is the universe benevolent, or is it not? And I think remembering that maybe life is just unbelievably benevolent, and that it's such a privilege and a blessing to be alive, is a helpful idea to keep around the house, which is not clean.
Yeah, that's certainly what we get. Certainly what we get from the tradition. That the deep meaning of the entire cosmos is awakening. That is the understanding that we get from this tradition. I think from all spiritual traditions. Yeah. Maybe last word. Yeah.
So Sylvia Boorstein, whom I also admired and loved, once said in a Dharma talk that she was a long-time subscriber to the New York Times, as I am, and that she had to give it up for 3 months. And I have noticed that every morning I do some exercises and sitting and meditation and coffee, and I'm feeling good. And then I go to the apps for several news things, and I feel bad. Right. And I'm thinking maybe I should try giving it up for a bit longer than just the retreat.
Yeah, that sounds important inquiry, right? To see what's one's relationship to the news, the updates, and so forth. What's fundamental, what's important, and what's extra or coming out of the, I don't know, I don't want to use exactly the word addiction, but just that wanting to get something, some stimulation, right, from the news.
I sort of feel like I should do it. I do have some activist kinds of things, but
yeah.
Anything such as eating, for example, can be overdone.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so gosh, I have the recorder on, but I haven't been able to get all the details from, we haven't, tried to be professional, I have a microphone and all that, but there was so much from everyone, right? Quite a compendium on daily life practice. Really, so much collective wisdom. It could be a wonderful focus for the group to continue, right? In different ways, and I think even to, have some notes and chronicle some of a lot of these different ideas. Some of them are going to be on the recording, but I didn't repeat everything, right? So it's not all there. So, how about you want to sit for 3 or 4 minutes to finish? Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate the collective wisdom. Thank you. And announcements?
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.